Welcome in to another edition of On the Beat Live, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. Inside Carolina's premier beat writer live podcast, and certainly premier sponsor in Johnny T-Shirt. I'm your host, Tommy Ashley, Adam Smith, Jeremiah Holloway, and John Bowman. This is the last regularly, listen now, we use words carefully on these shows, last regularly scheduled podcast for On the Beat Live until probably, I guess, Operation Football in late July. We'll get back into it at some point when these fellas go there and cover that. Adam, what's going on, man? I think you were you working today? I could have sworn I saw some news that you ran across my screen.
No, not much. It's pretty slow over here today. The last couple of, I mean, what in the world? Like, Don Chapman's out of the portal. There goes J.Q. Conley and Marcus Paige and so on and so on.
It's
we got
crazy.
Jeremiah getting ready for the NFL draft. Oh, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
no big deal. Thank God Jeremiah is working on that stuff. But I don't know. I may not have on any pants under here, beneath the screen. It's been such a fire drill that's going on. I mean, my head's been spinning a little bit. I'm going to stop whining.
Yeah, stop your whining. You're employed. You have a job.
Right. That's true. You feel very fortunate with that.
Yeah, and one thing Don Callahan had on today, and if it wasn't so hot up here in my way up / man cave, I'd have it on. The sweatshirt that says there is no off season. There simply is not. Look at there. We got sponsor in the chat already. Parroting my words there. But there is no off season at Inside Carolina. You mentioned Don Chapman. It reminds me of the Homer Simpson meme, where he walks in and takes his hat off and turns around, picks his hat up, and walks right back out. He is back at North Carolina. We're going to discuss that. We're going to discuss NFL draft. It's coming up Thursday night, tomorrow night, round one. Where we think we'll take a shot at where we think Josh Downs may wind up. And then, of course, what we're going to lead with, and we talked about it a little off air, but it's certainly the talk of the news of the Inside Carolina and the news and the message boards. And I'm going to get you back in here, Adam, and then I'm going to let you rest because Jeremiah and John and I are going to talk. But tell me a little bit about Mr. Marcus Paige returning to North Carolina's coaching staff.
It feels like a big deal, doesn't it?
It does.
We're all getting older. Marcus Paige is going to be 30 in September.
I knew you were going to say that. I was like,
that threw me off when you put that in there.
I had to put it in the story. You know what I mean? Like when I don't know, the old newspaper man in me is always like, okay, how old is this person? And I went and looked and I was like, damn, good Lord. But
to his credit, he does not look a day over his senior year at Carolina.
I mean, he's one of these many that will always be young to me, young and flinging up left-handed. How about the little, obviously the shot against Nova, but I will never forget the little left-handed scooper that kissed so high off the glass at NC State. What was it, over TJ Warren maybe?
Yeah, in an epic game. Just simply
oh, my God. He had like 35 that night maybe. And I think that got it to overtime. And then they won it over. And that thing was impossible. As high arcing as it was, it just had to just delicately kiss the glass to get in there. But yeah, I mean, this is something that the Marcus Paige news that we went after pretty hard today. And it's kind of bizarre since this is On the Beat Live to like start writing these things when you've covered them, and like now they're becoming, I mean, he's not technically a coach on the floor, but now he's transitioning from, former UNC great, 7-year pro overseas, well, some of it in the D League, to another phase of his life. And you're sort of trying to put it together like, I hate to use this word, but, almost like, well, I shouldn't say it. I was going to say obituary, but, you're trying to encapsulate what they've done. And also give the context to it. But, we're not sure. Let's, if you all read the story, I tried to make it clear that we're not entirely sure if that will be Jackie Manuel's, if he'll be replacing Jackie Manuel in the director of player development role, or if he will be in another kind of role that is similar to that. He very well could be replacing Jackie. I mean, the opening is there because Jackie is going to American to be an assistant coach. But we're not entirely sure. But, you know, if he's in that role that Jackie has been for the last 2 years, director of what is the title? Director of Team and Player Development, I think.
Yeah.
I think he'd be great. I think he's going to be perfect in it. I know this is a very popular move for UNC fans. One of the favorite sons of the Tar Heels.
He absolutely is. And, you know, you said the obit word, but it's like turning the page, using, you know, what we've always talked about with Marcus Paige. I mean, whatever he does involved with North Carolina basketball, he will improve it. He will personally benefit from it to get that experience, but he will bring something to the staff that I think is needed, and that I think a new perspective. And man, he was just such a good interview back when he was at school, and you know, just everybody's favorite Tar Heel. I'd wager that he might not be the most liked, but I bet you if you made a list of 1 through 10, you would not find anybody that was any more favored by Carolina fans than Marcus Paige. Jeremiah, when you heard the news of this, and I was trying to think, wait a minute, if Marcus Paige is 30, how old was Jeremiah when he played? Now I'm really dating myself, and we're all going to feel old. What did you think when you heard Marcus Paige is now on staff in some role to be determined at North Carolina?
It did feel like a little bit of a full circle moment. I did grow up watching Marcus Paige. I guess to have mercy on y'all, I'm not going to say how old I was when I was watching him, but I did watch him when I was growing up. You know, it's one of those roles where, you know, as kind of Adam said, maybe it's not a technical, you know, as, you know, visibly like on court, you know, middle of the game role. I guess it's a little bit more behind the scenes. Should that be the role he kind of takes up? But you know, I think it would be. I think a role like that, you do kind of want someone that does have a little bit of familiarity with, you know, I guess kind of being around. I know Hubert wasn't the coach, like the head coach, but, you know, he's been around kind of that program, has a familiar with, you know, how things kind of are done. I think that's kind of a common thing that UNC's been trying to keep up, you know, kind of trying to have some continuity from, you know, coach to coach or whatever the case may be in things of that nature. So when I first saw it, I was like, okay, you know, if that is the role that he takes on, I could definitely see that being a good fit for them for sure. And, you know, if nothing else, it's one of those things where it's like, I think some people are, you know, kind of what's Marcus Paige kind of up to? You know, he's playing, you know, he's trying to keep, you know, continue to be overseas, but, you know, it's not like a thing where you see him every day. So I think, you know, getting him back into the, I guess, local spotlight, you know, I think that's something that I found interesting. You know, it was like, hey, like Marcus Paige, that's, you know, blast from the past a little bit. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think the word you were searching for was young. He brings youth to the staff.
And he does that too. Yeah.
And he does do that. And it keeps sort of the you know, the continuity with the in crowd, the younger crowd. I mean, that's a big deal these days. Go ahead, John. Sorry to cut you.
You know, when Roy Williams retired, there was a lot of discussion amongst the fan base. I don't know how much this was discussed in the athletic director's office about whether to keep the position within the Carolina family or to go outside the Carolina family to find the next leader of the Carolina basketball program. Obviously, Hubert Davis, a huge move towards the Carolina family. I feel like this is an underline, bold, italic, every, you know, circling Carolina family. There's no one who represents the Carolina family more than Marcus Paige. So I think that that is an intentional choice to bring him back within the fold. You know, I think that that's just sort of who Hubert Davis is. He's always going to be kind of looking out for the Carolina family. And I think it's a good addition to the staff to bring Marcus Paige back.
Yeah, and Adam, Hubert Davis says he wants guys to work for him that played and are part of the Carolina family. He ain't lying. I mean, he's done it from top to bottom, and now he adds Paige. Your overall thoughts on this move, but also this offseason for North Carolina basketball? I mean, it's been hectic. You know, and your thoughts on, you know, we don't really talk recruiting or whatever. We talk more team stuff, but They've added 4 guys in the portal. Your overall thoughts there, on top of this Marcus Paige news?
First of all, John or Tommy has pinned a George Jenkins comment. My guy, George Jenkins. That is my guy. Never met him. Don't know what he looks like. Love him. You know what? Like real pretty girls have the reply guys on Instagram or whatever. George Jenkins is my reply guy. You know, I hope you're okay with that, George. Anyway, Tommy, I can't even remember what you asked, but it was about recruiting. I was going to say, as you were giving a nice lead in there, you know what has occurred to me as we've read Sherelle McMillan's incredible reporting, you know, with the transfer additions and just everything since the night that they were left out of the NCAA tournament, is it is very clear that Hubert Davis's message, at least right now, I don't know if it's been this way in the past, but at least right now, is if you come to UNC, one of the things that we got going for us is you're going to be coached by a point guard who played in the NBA, a wing who played in the NBA, and a big who played in the NBA in Jeff Lebo, Hubert Davis, and Sean May. You know, you read Sherelle's, you know, inside the commitment on Harrison Ingram, who they got this past weekend. And he's saying that to Sherelle. So it's almost like you can hear the Hubert Davis pitch, you know, right there as Harrison Ingram is being quoted by Sherelle. And yeah, I mean, the way the Marcus Paige thing fits in there, I think it's all a good ball of momentum, you know, if you're Hubert. You know, no one will ever forget that Marcus Paige shot against Villanova. I was there in Houston, and one of the things I always remember about Marcus was that senior speech that he gave at the Dean Dome that night, where he had everyone crying. I'm sure you guys remember that. Roy's over there wiping tears. Marcus is crying. I mean, you know, this guy was a 3-time academic All-American. You know, he's going to be successful in, I feel like, any role you put him in. And, you know, who knows? He could be groomed to be a next member of the coaching staff. You know, Jackie coached the JV team this past season, as Hubert Davis did, as Roy Williams did. You know, it would be interesting to see if Marcus takes the JV job. But yeah, what were you saying? The pieces are coming together, I guess, with the basketball roster. Is that what you're getting at?
It is certainly, given where we were when we did a podcast right after the NIT decision came down. It's amazing how it circles back, right, Jeremiah? I mean, you weren't in Chapel Hill, so you had a little bit bigger deal to cover down there in South Carolina. But this place was a bad moving place.
Certainly, I mean, no, I mean, I wasn't here, but I know plenty of UNC fans, UNC students. I know what the feeling was like. It kind of, even from down in South Carolina, it just kind of, you know, everybody's feelings and things like that, you know, I was able to sense it. Yeah, I think, but kind of, I guess, going back to the point of the current roster, it's funny, I was kind of looking at, you know, some of the different resources that we have here and, you know, just doing my own research too, just kind of trying to see how the pieces would fit next year and, you know, what maybe even the depth chart would look like. I was kind of drafting my own little depth chart a little bit earlier just so I could see it. I think when I'm looking at it, they did bring in guys that could either shoot or create their own shot. It's also interesting. I don't know that they have a true, between Withers and Ingram, I don't know if they have a true quote unquote stretch four. I think Withers might be a little bit closer to that. The reason I bring that up is because, you know, Hubert's kind of shown he likes the stretch four a little bit. He had Dawson Garcia, Brady Manick, and then he had Pete Nance in that role. So maybe that's what Withers does. I'm not positive. You know, I think they did a good job addressing the wing, the losses at wing, because that's something they certainly needed. I'm interested to see if they add another point guard while they have the chance. You know, RJ is more of a, you know, he's a scoring guard. He's a willing passer, obviously, but, you know, do they get somebody else to kind of bring the pressure off? I think Harrison Ingram probably helps with that because he does have a little point forward in him. So I'm looking at, you know, some of these pieces, and some of them they make sense. I think the pieces that they got made sense for RJ and Armando. I think in the modern college basketball world, when you do have so many departures, it does kind of leave your roster in a state of, okay, we only have 6 players. We're going to build around who's still here. I think that's basically what they did. They basically said, who can we get to space the floor out a little bit, create some room for Armando down low, allow RJ to continue to do what he does. Maybe some of those guys that can score it, allow them to or allows, I guess, RJ to, takes pressure off RJ and allows them to kind of get involved in the offense. So I think it's either way you cut it, it's going to be a very different UNC team. I think the things that maybe they tried to do last year, they might be better at from a standpoint of getting guys, open for shots. So it'll certainly be interesting to see. There's still a long time until that comes, and these guys haven't even played together yet. But I am interested to see, is this actually a better fit? On paper, I think it is, but it'll be interesting to see if they actually fit.
And just to add to that, what Jeremiah's laying out there is, I was just thinking about as he's saying it, there's 2 scholarships left for UNC in basketball. And I think that, I think they do have some nice pieces in place, but I think the question is, well, is Jalen Withers your starting 4? I mean, I think he has to be if they're going right now as it's currently constructed. And it seems like, or at least I get the sense that, you're holding that last scholarship for an Elliot Cadeau or the Dunlap kid that they started recruiting very recently. But you got to hold one for Cadeau, I would think. Right. And nobody's more plugged in on how this stuff fits together than our producer, John, who's all over the transfer portal rankings. What have you thought, John, about just the way that Hubert has brought in these guys and how they look? Cormac Ryan, Harrison Ingram, Jalen Withers, how they look like they're going to fit together with, Armando and RJ as sort of your linchpins.
First of all, I echo what Jeremiah said. I think Hubert Davis has done a great job putting the pieces back together this offseason. The Harrison Ingram recruitment, that was a contested recruitment. There were a lot of people who wanted him, and Hubert Davis went out and closed the deal. But to your point, Adam, they're still a piece away, I think, and they have 2 scholarships left. And you start to look in the transfer portal, you kind of see what's left in the transfer portal. Maybe there's not a difference maker there. The difference maker, I think, is still Elliot Cadeau. And this is the reckless speculation portion of the podcast. I'm going to put on my reckless speculation hat. It's a tough call because if you say, Elliot Cadeau, come play with us in 2023, you have to kind of see how does that impact some of the other pieces that we have on the roster. Does RJ Davis want to play next to a freshman point guard who might be kind of getting his feet under him in the early parts of the season? How much does RJ Davis need the ball in his hands? Because as well, in Harrison Ingram's interview that he did with Sherelle, he talked about, maybe playing point forward, maybe playing that Theo Pinson role with the ball in his hands. So I think that's the big question for me is, what do you all think? If you add in Elliot Cadeau, how does that impact some of the other pieces on the roster? Is it a good decision to bring Elliot Cadeau in for next season, or is it better to bring him in 2024?
I'll jump in first. I think that's gonna. I know nothing. I just listen to podcasts, and I think Elliot Cadeau would certainly be a good add for this team. I don't necessarily think that if he came in, that would be it. Because if he comes in, you're going to have a log jam in the backcourt, so you might have some more moving pieces there. But I think what they're missing, aside from Cadeau, is some sort of wing, a uber athletic wing. They don't have that. Harrison Ingram's not that. Jalen Withers might be, but how good is Jalen Withers? His best season's when he played the 5 at Louisville his freshman year. He's certainly athletic. Can he be that guy? Perhaps. Cormac Ryan, he's a decently athletic guy, but he's not a guy that I would say is the athletic wing we're talking about. And then Paxton Wojcik, I think, is going to be a guy that's got a little bit of what I like in him. He's got a little bit of that anger and that edge. We'll call it that. And I think he can be effective when he's used, but I still think they need, John, last week, if my memory serves, you said Harrison Ingram was the piece. But now you're saying they still need a piece. I think they need somebody, in the 6'5" to 6'7" range that
Mhm.
can play the three. You know, everybody loved Leaky Black, but let's be honest. Leaky Black is not the way you have elite basketball teams anymore. You got to have somebody in that position that can play. The defense was great, sure, but teams will just outscore you one way or another. And I think you've got to have somebody that can score. So I think that position's still there. That position's important for North Carolina, not to be a team that just can shoot, right? Because then you bump up against a team that's super athletic, that's on a roll, like an Alabama was this year, like a Houston can be. And they can lock down your shooters, and then they can put somebody bigger on Baycott, and then their guards are bigger than R.J. Davis and Elliott Cadeau, and you've got trouble.
Mhm.
So you got to have somebody that can get a bucket. I know people say Shannon or Trey Alexander, and all those names keep popping up. They would fit the role for sure, but I think it's out there that that's what they need, and we'll see if what happens. Like Sherelle says, this is not over. Don't judge the final roster until, gosh, it could legitimately be July or August.
Yeah, certainly. I wouldn't say that by any stretch adding Elliot Cadeau would be a bad move, just in the sense that he would get the opportunity to develop in college, things like that, get some of that playing experience. But there are a few things to consider. One thing that I would think about is he uses a year eligibility to essentially how much does he play? Like how much you're coming in, you're using that first year, and based on the evidence that we've seen, there have not been freshmen don't play a ton under Hubert Davis. That's just kind of what we've seen. So even if he did come in, so if he came in early, this season, that's something I would think about. And is it more advantageous because next year, I don't know if he'll use it or not, but RJ does technically have a fifth year still. So would RJ be around next year? I'm not really sure, but at least if he was around, next year, that's only 1 year you'd have to quote unquote play under him versus two. To Cadeau's credit, he's got something you really can't teach when it comes to just ability to pass the ball. He knows how to get guys. Turnovers do happen, but he knows how to really find guys. And I think honestly, just as much as a wing scorer, that's something that UNC really could use too, just like getting guys in the right position. I think the last couple of years, other than probably the tournament run, ball movement wasn't something that I think that team was great at. I don't think they were great at kind of getting a fluid offense going. I think Cadeau could help with that. It would probably take him time to really master an offense, but yeah, I think that's something he could certainly help with. And then along with Tommy's point, as far as getting another guy that can create their own shot, I think that's definitely fair. You want that. I just wonder. I don't know if that's the way they want to create their team. Like it really does still feel to me that they want to get Armando, kind of as involved as he can, and then have the other guys, quote unquote, as bailouts. Being able to. I think Cormac Ryan's a good example of a guy that can kind of get his own shot. But I think outside of that, a lot of it is who can kind of space the floor and give Armando more room. So it really just depends on the team that you're trying to build. So if you're building it around Armando inside, you're going to have more of the roster that you have now. And so, there are still some names in that portal, but I don't know if there's any makers or breakers in the portal if you're a team like UNC that pretty much has the design of your roster kind of already set up right now.
So way back in the day at Eastern Alamance High School, this would be in the 90s. We used to have this thing. There was no such thing as advanced data or analytics or anything then, like in baseball too. It was just what your batting average was. You remember that? But the guy who was in charge with us, who I don't have a ton of good things to say about, came up with this thing. I'm sure he got it from somewhere else. And it was like, it gave you your value as a player. It rated you. It rated you from good shots that you take to bad shots. Like if you took a bad shot, he would go through the film. Good shot, bad shot, everything you did. But one of the things that it also tracked was post feeds. And boy, I used to rack up those post feeds. Let me tell you, fake high, bounce low, fake low. throw it in. I mean, it was fantastic. Like somehow I was able to game the system with the post feeds because I guess that meant you were unselfish or something. I don't know. All of this is to say, I was thinking that, the Harrison Ingram post feeds to Armando Bacot, I think are going to be quite a thing. If you watch the Harrison Ingram tape, he's whipping all sorts of passes in there to dudes at Stanford who didn't make the NCAA tournament and weren't that great, I think Cormac Ryan, I'm really interested to see if going to UNC and playing with someone who draws so much attention like Armando and someone who I feel like is a better passer. I know the numbers don't bear it out on RJ because I think he just averages like 3 assists per game for his career. But I feel like RJ really can move it, when it needs to be moved. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm interested to see if Cormac Ryan's game sort of frees up in a way, with I feel like an upgrade in talent that he'll be playing with. But I always go back to this. It was Hubert said, as the season was winding down and it was looking more and more dire, that, there are going to be some hard conversations this offseason, and we're going to have to address our deficiencies, which are shooting and athleticism in some spots. And I just don't know, to go back to Jalen Withers and guys like, I don't know how athletic they've gotten. Someone in the comments said that, bouncy wings don't grow on trees, which is true. But I feel like if they really want to put together, there you go. Mark Williams nailed it.
100%.
I just feel like, I don't know. I mean, I know we're getting, it's not a perfect world, but I just feel like they need another athletic piece. I think Simeon Wilcher is an athletic player. Don't forget about the freshmen that are coming in, Simeon Wilcher and Zayden High. Seth Trimble is certainly very athletic, but the guy's 6 foot tall, maybe not even that. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on that.
To your point, bouncy wings don't grow on trees. Then why did we watch the NCAA tournament this year without North Carolina in it and see team after team after team that had a 6'6" guy that could bounce? Even Florida Atlantic.
They had a bunch of them.
Yeah, they had like 10 of them. And of course, I always talk about Houston and teams like that. You just got to find them, and then you've got to surround them. But you look at teams. Jeremiah, when you were talking, you made me have an epiphany here. And I'm like, maybe what he's saying is exactly right. This is a roster that's being constructed to get Armando Bacot what he should get. And that's a championship for him, but also a showcase for Bacot. And I started thinking about it, and I'm like, you don't have a guy that's going to get you 20 on one-on-one on the roster. There's guys that can hit shots and get to there. But it is all geared. It seems to be geared to get Bacot what he had last year or year before last when Manic was there. And so it's going to be something to watch. I still think as a team, you got to have somebody. And we saw it this year with Caleb Love and RJ Davis. They just could not do it. You got to have somebody who can get you a bucket.
For sure.
You got to have somebody that can go get a bucket.
Yep.
I don't know who's on this team right now other than RJ, and this includes the portal transfers, that you can say, give me a bucket right now.
I had that thought the other day driving the car. Who takes the last shot?
Exactly.
Who takes the last shot, John, on this team right now?
RJ Davis.
You got to draw RJ Davis? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't think there's any question that it's RJ, but how many times did RJ get wrapped up by somebody that's 5 or 6 inches taller than he was, and he couldn't get a shot off? That's where your kicks come. That's where you got to have shooters.
For sure.
And that's where I think Hubert has addressed that in the portal. I just think they need a bucket getter. A lot of people always say, I'm the one that always wants dogs on the team. Yeah, I love those type guys. But you got to have a bucket. And if I need a bucket, like Ty Lawson in 9 or 8 or 7, we need a bucket, go get me one. And they'd invariably get a layup. Go back and watch Ty Lawson at Duke, where he just absolutely destroyed the entire team, got a bucket every time they needed it.
Second half.
That's what you got to have. Anything left, boys, on the basketball side? Jeremiah, you got anything left?
I mean, honestly, RJ, if you want to take the last shot, you could do what Trae Young did yesterday and just do the step back 3 from 30 feet out. I will say one more thing I was kind of considering when I made my depth chart. And again, this was literally just my predictions and, just things I was thinking about. I was thinking about, what if, I'm just throwing this out there, what if you brought Cormac Ryan off the bench as a 6-man? So that way, when you have a bench that has less quote unquote bucket getter, I'm not saying he's a bona fide, 20 a night, but what if you have him, he can create his own shot a little bit, put him maybe in a second unit, kind of, when the second unit kind of comes, allow for some scoring to kind of be there. Not because he's not one of the 5 best players on the team, but just, to allow for, a chance to get some bench scoring. Is that something you probably consider? So that's what I put in there, something I'm just, pretty much throwing out at this point, but I can see it.
It's a worthwhile thought, Jeremiah. But the problem is, I think with Hubert, unless he changes, he doesn't bring these guys in out of the portal to bring them off the bench.
Yeah, we brought in 4 guys though.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, right. It's a good thought. It's a productive thought. I'm not saying Hubert's right. I'm just saying that, he had to bring Brady Manick off the bench 2 seasons ago because he decided he was going to start Dawson Garcia. He was not going to not start him.
Yeah.
And then Garcia got the concussion and Brady started playing better, and you saw what happened. All of a sudden, Dawson Garcia had to go home, which I'm not trying to make light of his situation there in Minnesota, but, come on.
But he went to the bench, and then he went to the house.
Yeah, he went to the bench, and they played Wake on a Saturday, got destroyed, and then he was gone by Monday when they played Virginia Tech or BC at home. It was one maroon-colored team. I think it was I can't remember. It might have been Virginia Tech.
Well, the issue is if you play 7 guys or 8 guys 25 minutes a game, or 20 minutes a game, you can play a ton of guys and you can run them in and you can run teams to death.
And you can have Cormac Ryan as your leader of the second unit. That's an absolutely worthwhile thought.
That'll be the number one thing I watch.
The UNC basketball office. Yeah.
If I will be shocked. We can have 10 burning questions in the offseason. We've talked about the bench for 2 years. I understand it last year, or excuse me, in the run. I don't really understand it last year. But, and to Orange Shovel's point, if Hubert has options that he trusts and he plays, there's tons of options. There are tons of ways that this can be done. But y'all are right. Guys don't transfer to sit on the bench. They just don't. They could have gone anywhere else. I think Cormac Ryan will be a guy that's going to be very important for this team, not only in his play, but the leadership. And he and even Paxton Wojcik will get up in you and have some things to say to you. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch. I don't think they're done though. I agree with
Jalen Washington too. It's like, he's I almost feel when I think about the basketball team, I almost feel myself forgetting about Jalen Washington because I feel like Jalen Washington needs to make a big jump and can. Maybe you could have a lineup. I'm not saying they will or they should. Maybe you have a lineup where you trust Armando and Jalen on the floor together. You have the twin tower type look or the 2 traditional bigs like Roy would like to play back in the day. That's going to be a question about Jalen Washington's conditioning, who he can guard, that type of thing. But he's one of the more talented players on that roster, I think, or one of the ones with a lot of potential. If his body is where it needs to be, and if he's improving, think about the guys that have come back before, and you've been like, wow, he had a great summer. But as our friend Missy Jones says in the comments, I think you need a big year from Jalen Washington. He seems like he's sort of one that's easy to forget because we've gotten conditioned to thinking about Armando as the big, and then all the pieces that play around him to space the floor. And then again, all these guys play 35 minutes. So it probably should and will be different next year. And he's another reason why it should and will be different.
I think it has to be. It has to be because if you get 3 years of the same stuff, then you better figure out how to have 5 NBA All-Stars starting because nobody's going to want to come and not be in that starting lineup and especially in the portal era. I'm going to take a break from basketball. unless anybody objects. John, do you have any weird stat or anything? John, I must say that since I learned the news of your betterment in life, you look much happier and you're glowing, man.
Thank you. Maybe it's because I changed the light bulb out in my no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
But yeah, seriously, good luck to you, my man. Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com sponsors the program, sponsors of Inside Carolina Premium subscribers. We've been talking about Sherelle McMillan a lot, and hat tip to Sherelle and the rest of the Coast to Coast crew.
Yes.
Premium stuff, you get on there and you can see premium stuff that Sherelle knocks out all the time. Same with Don Callahan. Did a show with him earlier. I don't see Preston from Greensboro in here, but Preston, I changed clothes before this show, so I didn't have the same clothes on 2 straight podcasts. Function of being old and retired. But Don Callahan, the football recruiting stuff, always all over it. So take time to join Inside Carolina if you haven't already. There's never a time not to, because good gracious, you might get a text about something you had no idea about otherwise, with some breaking news if you were part of Inside Carolina and the premium subscription. Let the national guys pay the bills. It's On the Beat Live. A little after halfway through, we'll be right back. All right, fellas, 9:38 on the East Coast. Let's turn to football. Title of the show is Transfer Portal Still Churning. Certainly still is in basketball. Adam, you mentioned it earlier. I will say this. I heard that Conley was leaving well before it became public. And from a father, from somebody that watches sports, that kind of stunk to hear. Not necessarily on the football side, but you're injured. Obviously he had some troubles dealing with the injury and what all that brings for a young person. But anyway, he enters the transfer portal. And then all of a sudden, Don Chapman says, I'm coming back. Is it related, do you think? Or is it just the nature of the beast here in 2023 in April?
Where's the Brian Windhorse meme? What does it all mean? Or what, the
classic.
What he did. What was it, last summer or something?
The Jazz trade, yeah.
Why would they do that, Tommy? Tommy, first of all, let's get one thing straight. What would you like your official source nickname to be? What, back in Watergate there was Deep Throat. I mean,
not that.
I did not know. I got a call on Saturday and was told that we'd heard about this Jaquarius Conley news. I had no idea that you were the deep throat behind this source, TA. So we should all give you your kudos for that. I was writing this, I'm writing a 1,000-word story. I think it turned out to be 900-word story. And Tommy Ashley was the driving force behind it.
I know nothing, man. I know nothing. No, I don't want credit.
Just
no.
What is it? The puppeteer behind the scenes there?
I'm all about the team. I just want to make the team better.
Insider Tommy Ashley there instead of just TA.
I need my blue check.
Tommy
that I don't pay for.
Ashley says, my guy.
Yeah, that's what somebody says.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you just get to know people and you find out things, but best of luck for him. Right?
Yes.
He's got to do it. Kids want to play.
I don't mean to make light of Jaquarius Conley at all, because I love the guy. I loved watching him play when he was a younger player. I tried to convey in that story. I mean, think about 2020, which obviously was such a weird year. There's nobody in these stadiums, but man, he came on at the end of the year. I know everyone always remembers Javonte Williams and Michael Carter and the way they just absolutely destroyed Miami to end that regular season. But Jaquarius Conley was all over the field making plays that day.
Probably the biggest play of the game right out of the gate. I mean, that forced them to, I think they forced them to punt early, and then the floodgates open.
And you want to talk about a guy who just looked incredible. I mean, my God, this dude, if I was built like Jaquarius Conley, I would never wear a shirt. You would never, it would be so many, I'd find so many reasons just to be taking my shirt off. Like, oh, geez, the guy's just jacked. And so obviously a tremendous fan favorite with the UNC fan base, and for good reason, because of what a promising young freak athlete. He would hit you. You know, there was a photo that I always remember with Ja'Qurious Conley from the 2021 season, and Carolina played UVA at home early. I think it was a September night in Keenan, and Ja'Qurious had an interception that day, and I think it was a USA Today photographer got it, and he got him at the top of his jump with this photo. He looks like he is 12 feet in the air from the way the photo is shot, and he's flying. And it's like Dontavian Wicks or somebody from UVA looking up at him like just helpless. You know, it's unbelievable. But then you had that extremely athletic package and the incredibly unfortunate knee injury that just derailed everything. And, you know, he's been very open about his, you know, struggles with his mental health and getting past that. And I can't imagine being that type, being so good at something like that, and then having it taken away and questioning when you plant, if it's going to be there, you know what I mean? So I will be fascinated to find out where he goes. It sounded like some ACC schools were already reaching out to him, and definitely do. I was getting some jokes off at Tommy, but I definitely do wish him well. He was always great with us, dealing with us, and I hope it works out well for JQ.
Yeah, this transfer feels different than a lot of the other transfers. I think that to me, there was a triumvirate coming out of those 3 games at the end of the 2020 season and the Orange Bowl. You had young cornerback Tony Grimes, who flashed in some of those games. You had young wide receiver Josh Downs, who looked like a next great wide receiver at UNC. And you had JQ Conley at safety. Those 3 guys, I think, represented a lot of Mac Brown 2.0. They were all a part of the class of 2020 recruiting class. And now all 3 of them are gone, moved on to other greener pastures. In fact, I looked at this earlier today because I was curious. Only 3 of the top 10 recruits in that class of 2020 are still here. Desmond Evans, Miles Murphy, and Kendrick Bigley Jones are the only 3 who are still left on the roster. And class of 2020, that wasn't that long ago. That was Mac Brown's first full recruiting class. Obviously, he was part of the class of 2019 where he picked up Sam Howell, but he had so much recruiting momentum. And now here we are in 2023, and it feels like a lot of the air has been let out of the balloon of that recruiting class. So that's why, to me, this does really feel like a different transfer because of everything JQ represented. I think also he represented in-state recruiting for North Carolina, much like Tony Grimes represented how well UNC recruited in the state of Virginia. JQ was a top recruit in this state. You know, maybe put in Desmond Evans and Miles Murphy in there as well, but it was part of, retaking the state and getting these elite kids to come and play for UNC. And now that's sort of the narrative's gone a little bit, I think, without JQ on the roster.
Yeah, for sure. Real quick to I guess answer a question that was asked. Yes, I have heard of Watergate. I did take a push in high school. So but yeah, no, I mean, I think everything that John just said was very beautifully put. I think it really just represents a greater, and we've probably talked about it like ad nauseum, I guess, at this point. But yeah, I mean, it does represent the greater reality of, what the transfer portal is, of, your team can look like this 1 year or maybe for a little bit and then just immediately change. Somebody asked me, I think a few days ago or a few weeks ago, toward the beginning of when I got hired, and they were like, because so UNC, and I'm going to bring up basketball only for this reason. I think their runs to the championship was my senior year, and somebody asked me, how does it feel that only, I think, 2 of the players on that team are still there? And it took me a second. I was thinking, wow, like, there wouldn't have been that dramatic of a change. And that's even just a smaller scale of basketball. But even with football, I mean, even Colorado, and that's a different situation, but I saw Colorado had 40 plus players leave, and Dion even asking them to leave. And that's probably a different conversation. Yep. But that's the game now. You can bring in these really good recruiting classes that don't stay the whole 4 to 5 years, in a football sense. So I think another thing that it kind of makes you think about is now you have to be good at both stages. Like, you can't really look at the transfer portal and be like, oh, this is, this new fad and people are doing this, people doing that. You really, if you're a coaching staff, you have to embrace the transfer portal. Like, you have to go into every season saying, I don't know who's staying, I don't know who's leaving. I could lose 20 to 30 players, I have to be ready to pick up 20 or 30 players every year just from like other schools. So I think it's something that, is very present now, and people just, really have to accept it. And, classes like the 2020 class, that can happen. That can happen any year.
It's interesting about the portal. And I'm not sure what Deion's going to end up doing at Colorado, but I mean, I think they got 22 guys on that roster from last season. I don't think it's sustainable. But the thing
Didn't
is,
they lose
now,
like over 30 guys in the portal? But he
Over
told
40,
them to leave.
I think 42, and he asked a lot of them to leave.
he ran them
he
off.
said he
But
was
now,
bringing Louis.
but now you've got guys from Jackson State that transferred with him that want out. And supposedly he's telling them to leave. It's crazy. It's a mess. But I say all that to say this. I'm going to watch. That's exactly what they want you to do. I'm going to pay attention to what's going on in Boulder, Colorado. But to Jeremiah's point, what we're talking about, I don't know if it's program building anymore. I don't know if that's the thing. Now, maybe it'll all settle out, and Mac believes it'll all settle down and all, and maybe it will. But now it's roster management and putting puzzle pieces to a puzzle together year for year, and not building the puzzle for the following year or the year after that, because I don't know how much you can do that. And there's a ton of questions, and we're going to get to them. But, to your point about the 2020 recruiting class, and there's several of them that are still there down the list. But, man, those are supposed to be the best players of your team at this time.
Yep.
They're supposed to be the juniors and seniors that lead these teams. And everybody does it. It's going to be that thing forever. But I just think it's changed the game. I just don't know if program building and player development matters as much. That maybe is a deeper conversation for a later time. But anyway,
I'll go one step further on that, Tommy. That whole thesis was such a big part of Mac Brown 2.0. I mean, we know that he is a kind of CEO type coach, and he's all about recruiting and building a fence, keeping the in-state talent in. But unfortunately, just for factors outside of his control, in the Mac Brown 2.0 era, the COVID year really threw everything off because it made all of these teams 1 year older, and it gave extra eligibility to all these players. So all of a sudden, if you stack up these recruiting classes, you're going to be playing against 24-year-olds. So that kind of undercut that. And then the transfer portal also undercut your ability to really recruit. So that's one thing I've been reflecting on as well, is sort of this Mac Brown 2.0 era was a little bit mistimed in that way, because if he comes back in a different era a few years earlier, maybe, I think that the impact of all these recruiting classes would have been a lot greater. So that's a little bit of a galaxy brain take. I have my reckless speculation segment, and this is my galaxy brain take. But I've been thinking about that a little bit as well. Adam, do you have a reflection before we jump into some rapid fire comments?
I mean, you're just out of control, first of all, John.
I thought it was a fabulous take.
Yeah, I think it's great. We need more from you, John. We need more. I mean, we miss Ross, of course, but, I think there's a space now for your personality to grow. So just get loose with it, Johnny.
Yeah, man, you're glowing Johnny. It was John B. Started.
I was thinking about when
season
someone
out of
mentioned Des Evans. I hate to even say this, because it's April and we'll be talking about this. You know how many sacks Des Evans has for his UNC career in 3 seasons? He has 1. And much like JQ Conley, I mean, the last person I would ever want to make mad at me is Des Evans. I mean,
well, he's still in Chapel Hill and he listens to this. Des, that guy, not this ball guy, that guy.
He's a monster. I was walking. He was parked near me the other day, and I was just, talking to him a little bit. So, Des, love you, obviously. But 1 sack, 3 years. Anyway, I was thinking about that one because you're right. Now's the time when your 5 stars and 4 stars really start to show up from a couple of recruiting classes ago. I think that's with like a Zach Rice, people want him to be ready now. When, you think about the offense, I don't know when he's going to be ready, by the way. You think about the offensive line, the defensive line requiring some time for people to get older and bigger and stronger and to mature. People want it quickly. And when you have those recruiting wins that Mac had when he first got here, that's why we were writing the stories that the magic is back. I mean, yeah, you want it to show up, and it needs to show up when you have those recruiting wins.
Yeah.
I have some questions here prepared. We're going to do a rapid fire segment real quick. So you three, all of you be ready. I'm going to hit you with a few of these questions. We're going to start off with you, Tommy. This is from Alan. Has UNC dodged a bullet with George Pettaway not leaving yet?
Dodged a bullet. They've got a stable of running backs there. Pettaway's one of them. He's got to be healthy. He needs to perform. I think he'll be there this fall and have an opportunity. One thing the coaching staff has to do is give him opportunities to succeed. It's tough to throw a football player in for one play and expect them to get going. But they've got a lot of guys out there. And when you have a running back room or any room where there's 6 or 7 guys that can play, and you're the one that's injured, then you're not going to play and you're going to get behind. So I think Pettaway is a big part of this offense. I think there is much value in his skill set in Chip Lindsey's offense. I really believe that. We'll see how it shakes out. So he's there at the moment and fully anticipate him to be there in the fall. But, hey, Portal World, who knows? And shout out, this is water in my blue cup. Blue cup water, somebody asked.
Great photo from Alan Minton, too, by the way. You look great, guy. Excellent choice for your profile pic.
This one is from MGM DDS. This is for Adam. Will William Barnes be serviceable at left tackle? What do you think, Adam?
2 minutes. You got 2 minutes.
No. I mean, that's a great question, MGM DDS, whoever you are.
That's the dentist, I would assume.
Yeah, I would think so, too. My son was at the orthodontist today. Yeah. I mean, I think that's why that Mac, when he didn't have to, I think that's one of the reasons Mac said after the spring game, we're always looking for offensive linemen and quarterbacks. I mean, he didn't say William Barnes' name, but, I just think that's obviously such an important position, your left tackle. And, serviceable, I can say to answer the questions, sure, I think he could be serviceable, especially when Drake May's your quarterback because, he can get out of some jams and make you not look as bad as some things might be. I think that was always an interesting thing to me, that talking to some people around the program when we're sort of going from the Sam Howell era to would it be Drake May or Jacoby Criswell, and I had 2 different people who would know what they're talking about say, if it ends up being Drake May, I think we're going to have a lot fewer sacks this year. You remember sacks were an issue with Sam, as good as he was. I think the inference there was he held the ball sometimes a little too long. But I don't know. I think serviceable, yes, but I think you want your left tackle to be more than serviceable. So I think that's going to be an area we're watching all preseason and early in the season to see how he's holding up. It's a move from right guard to the opposite side of the line to left tackle for William Barnes. We'll see what he's got.
This one is for Jeremiah. Will Drake May lead UNC to a conference championship? Do you think conference championship, is that the ceiling for this team next year?
Is it the ceiling? You'd have to say it's the ceiling, but this is the thing, and I was talking to somebody about this a little bit ago. I honestly think the team maybe got a little bit, I don't know if it got exceptionally better off of last year, but it certainly did add some pieces it need to add. But the thing is, I'm looking at the schedule. I feel like the schedule is a little bit more difficult. So I feel like there are more rigorous opponents, probably to close the season. I think starting with South Carolina is going to be difficult because that could very well end up being, in Charlotte, that's a short drive for, Columbia Gamecock fans. As someone that did live in Columbia, yes, I know. But seriously, so I think it's going to be, more difficult to win it this year than it probably was last year. Will he? I'm not trying to dance around the question, at all, but I do think that it's possible because of his, because of his arm talent. But I don't think it'll just be because of Drake May. I think they do still need to figure out precisely what they're going to do at running back. I think they need to decide who's the guy, who's going to be probably, the workhorse, because it sounds like that's what they want to do. So who is that going to be? Who are we going to go to? And can they be productive in the pass game too? Like, can we get them to catch, passes out of the backfield, things like that? It's difficult when it's football because, you have to also factor in the other side of the ball. I mean, we're talking about this offense averaged 34 a game last year, but the defense, obviously gives up, what they give up. And so those things are all things that I'm kind of thinking about. Do I think that's a reasonable ceiling? Yes. I just think it'll be more difficult this year than it was last year.
This one's for Tommy. We'll do one more rapid fire round here. Tommy, do you think there'll be any more UNC football players to hit the portal before it closes?
When's it close, Adam? The 30th?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, April 30th.
What's today? Wednesday. So what's that?
Sunday. Sunday. I think it goes to 11:59. I mean, how do you enforce it? I don't know. I think it goes to midnight Sunday. Or
I would say yes. Who, I do not know, but I would say yes. That is a reasonable assumption that there will be another name into the portal. More importantly for me, watching to see who comes from North Carolina over the summer, not named Antavis Lane from Georgia State. I think that's something to watch. Somebody else in the chat asked, is the quarterback comment, that Mac made when he was talking about offensive line and quarterbacks, is that to light a fire under Connor Harrell? Yeah, I don't, and I'm stealing it from you guys. I just don't. I don't think you can get a quarterback out of the portal that's going to be on the bench. I just don't. Quarterbacks are different, and that'll be interesting to watch. But anyway, either of y'all got a comment on that? I know, Adam, we talked about it a couple weeks ago or last week, I guess, with Jeremiah was here as well. But I just don't. I don't see that as reasonable. But I could. I mean,
unless shout out Ansel Gamble, by the way, one of Mebin's own. We're still out here getting cuter, I think. I don't know.
Mebin? Speed trap.
Well, I certainly Mac and Phil Longo and Chip Lindsey and these guys know how to recruit better than I do. But is there any way, do you guys think, that you could talk to a quarterback in the portal and say, look, once you come in, transfer to UNC this year, you're going to be behind Drake May, who could win the Heisman, who's this is his last year in college. He's going to be a top 5, top 10 NFL draft pick. We'll put you behind him. You're going to compete with Connor Harrell for the starting job in 2024. Is that a way you could convince, a developmental quarterback to come in and to try to come out of the portal and not, go to some lower level school or go to some other school that's got a need for a starting quarterback? I don't know. As we said the other day, I guess it was last week, that I just don't think that the starting quarterback for 2024 at UNC right now is on the roster. Now, I could be dead wrong about that, but and I don't think that the coaches think that either. I think that's one reason you heard that from Mac the other day. I think their plan all along was, look, you got a generational player in Drake May. You're fine there for 2023. But I think their plan all along is to see what they got with Connor Harrell and Tad Hudson. I'm not sure what they think of Tad Hudson. The guy's supposed to still be in high school right now. And then try to go get a guy out of the portal, I think, after next December, when it'll get real wild and woolly like it did this past December. So I don't know. Mac said Connor Harrell has earned the right to be the backup quarterback, but other than that, I don't feel like they've shown a tremendous amount of confidence in him. But that's just my sense. That's my sense of the thing. Mac said it in one of our pressers that leading up to the Holiday Bowl, that they were disappointed in the way he practiced. Connor Harrell, I'm saying, because Criswell was gone then. Criswell got in the portal hours after the ACC championship game ended. I mean, I think he was that was a Saturday night, and I think he was in the portal Sunday morning at like 9 a.m. Or something like that. So I think that's definitely something to monitor. And And I think Slagle said, no, you can't do that. I mean, I don't know if you can do that. If you can sell a guy on coming in and sitting for a year, maybe that's just wishful thinking. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't believe you can. No, go ahead, Jeremiah. I just don't think that's feasible to think that's possible.
I just think it's a tough sell only because you're pretty much going to get the situation you got this year where whoever loses out for the starting job automatically gets in the portal. So it's like, in theory, would you want to be able to bring in somebody to try and compete for a job? Maybe, but the thing about it is, say Connor Hill beats out whoever you bring in, then that same guy goes back into the portal. Does someone want to run that risk? That's part of what I think. Does somebody want to compete for a job that they're not guaranteed for? Then pretty much have to jump in the portal again. And then if you do bring in a guy, does that make Connor Harrell kind of say, "What's my value? Do I want to stay here?" I think it's just so interesting. I think the portal does afford you the opportunity to at least shop around. I mean, because all these teams, or a lot of these teams, I should say, do have quarterback battles. Let's say a team in the SEC has, a quarterback battle going on right now, and the quote unquote loser of that hits the portal. Well, I mean, you have for all intents and purposes, you do have an SEC quarterback in the portal. Do you want to look at that to, kind of be the successor to Drake May? I mean, it's something you just at least have to be looking out for, So, and you do, I think the advantage that you get from a transfer portal quarterback over a high school quarterback, you do get somebody that has college football experience, whether that even if that's just in practice, if that's just going, but you're still in practice going against these D1 athletes. So that's something that you do get. I think you probably have a higher ceiling guy out of a high school, but at least with a transfer portal quarterback, you can at least kind of look at that and say, hey, if we need to use you for a year, that's fine, whatever. But yeah, I think the overall point is it would be difficult to sell, a quarterback competition to a guy, because really all you could do if you lose that battle is wait around for the guy to get hurt or wait to the end of the season to jump in the portal. That's really your only two options. So it'd be a tough sell. I'm interested to see who would be the first team to successfully pull that off, or to really sell a guy on that. But yeah, we'll just have to see there.
Texas has an interesting quarterback battle, and so that's one of those things where you never know. A lot of people are in the chat talking about how quarterback portal shopping is much better in December. So those will be things to watch. We'll see what happens. Adam, I might bet you on that. You don't think the 24 quarterbacks on the roster. I might get some of that action at some point.
Okay, let's do it. Let's put a pin in it. And
let me get into fall camp, and then we might go at that. Anyway, it's about time to get out of here. John, you had one more.
First of all, Tommy, I love it. Arch Manning to UNC, says Tommy Ashley.
Right.
Wait.
Okay, guys.
I'm checking my hearing aid.
I have one. This is a little bit of fun hazing here for Jeremiah. Last rapid fire question of the night. Jeremiah, in the 2023 season, how many sacks is Desmond Evans going to get? I need it on the record right now. What's your take?
On the record right now, 2023.
Fifth on it, Jeremiah.
I'm going to assume that
pick it. Don't assume though.
Well, no, let me finish. I'm going to assume that Desmond Evans is either currently watching or will go back and watch this and hear that he only had the one sack. So I think that might be something that I'm gonna say Desmond Evans gets. I'm gonna say 5 sacks. I'm gonna say 5.
All right, that's a reasonable answer. I was hoping you wouldn't say double digits. That's all.
No. I'm gonna say 5. You got to ease into it.
For the record, Gregory had 10.
Yeah.
I said you're insane. I took the under. And if I recall correctly, Gregory hadn't repaid him, but I will see Gregory in LA next month, so I might have to collect, or the old Vander Holyfield commercial. ESPN commercial, one of the great ones.
Come in and get your whooping.
Yeah, come on out and get your whooping.
Come on and get your whooping, Charlie.
Let's get out of here. This has been one other thing I wanted to mention on the quarterback deal is Drake May is going to be the quarterback this year, but Chip Lindsey's the new offensive coordinator. We got to make sure, if you're North Carolina, that quarterbacks want to come and play with Chip Lindsey. assuming
Yeah, well,
he's the
doesn't he have to
offensive
get his
choice.
quarterback too? You got to have that. That has to be the right marriage, right? Like, I
Yep.
mean,
So you got if Drake May has a terrible season, it's going to be seen as, oh, it's because Longo went to Wisconsin and Lindsey, blah, blah. There's a lot of moving parts there. So I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, I might get in on some of that action. But great discussion on the Beat Live. Look, it was better than I thought it would be because we're all tired. We've all been awake too terribly long. And once again, these guys turn in top-notch efforts. There is no off-season at Inside Carolina. But that will be, or this will be the last regularly scheduled, note the word, on the Beat Live. Jeremiah Holloway, Adam Smith, John Bowman, Johnny T-Shirt, and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. We'll get back together at some point. We'll get the band back together. Stay tuned for all summer stuff from Jason Staples and myself and Taylor Vipolis. If you haven't listened to the Anson Dorrance Next Level with Greg Barnes and I, please go listen to that. That needs to be must-listen TV or YouTube for any Carolina fan or any sports fan. Check it out. Check out the Coast to Coast, all the rest of the stuff. It's been fun, guys. On the Beat's out until late July, early August. We'll see you then, guys. Everybody here, be safe. Thanks, John.